Hello everybody, Joe Bag of Donuts here. Welcome back for another episode of Umineko. Last time we left off, Lambda Delta is now in control of the game. Ain't good. The game's already almost over. That ain't good either. Time to play a little catch up on what the fuck's going on in this episode, question mark. Also, I'm recording this a little later in the day than I would have originally done it. It's what even time is it? It's 9:45 right now. I slept in. I woke up at like 2:30 in the morning, which is pretty late for me. Normally, even on my days off, I try to wake up around like 11 midnight to keep my schedule, intact. And I was staying up extra late today, well, planned on it, to go grocery shopping, but I decided against that because I don't want to leave the house. Fuck that. And also because I'll be going to base anyway tomorrow to go shoot guns for an hour because I have to, because my general way up on high said all AMC airmen must fire 2 clips into a 7-meter target, aim for the head, lethality is key. So now literally every single fucking person in Air Mobility Command has to go shoot, which is fun. Good times. Yep. Don't ask about it. I'm not going to offer any opinions on the memorandum he sent out. It's just that he did it. He did send one, and you can go read it online and then make your own opinions about it. I will keep my opinions to myself. Anyway, I have nothing else to say. Let's go. Though, I did say yesterday, well, it was yesterday for me. For you guys, it would have been two days ago if you're watching this when I come out. I was going to order some Indian food after I recorded because I was still, drunk and wanted some. But the place near me doesn't open on Mondays, which means I'm going to have to order food today. Yesterday, I just sustained myself on, one of the last packs of ramen noodles I had sitting in my cupboard next to, the cans of tomato sauce and, and that's it. And, the taco meat seasoning. It's looking pretty dire in the cupboard. I do have some, frozen stuff in the freezer, but it's, frozen, fish patties and, fruit mix. More berries. Frozen blackberries and raspberries and whatnot, some blueberries. Which, yeah, I mean, I could thaw those out, but I don't want to eat, defrosted berries for lunch. That's a little too depressing, even for me. So Indian food it is. Once I'm done recording this, which, if we go for a normal episode length, the place near me will be open and I can put it in an order. Fingers crossed. Knock on wood. Right now, no humans exist on this island except for those in the parlor. With one exception, it has been shown that none of them have committed murder. The culprit is among these people.
Oi, to naru to, kettei-teki ja nei ka.
魔女が犯人で魔法で殺人を犯したわけでない限り
Which we know isn't true because magic ain't real.
あんたなの？あんたがジョージを主人を殺したの？どうしてよ？どうして？
Yeah, I was just trying to, give him a little haircut, but, scissors slipped and caught him in the throat.
私は殺していません。私は何も。
In a panic, and with a voice that really couldn't be called flowing, in a manner that was, to put it coldly, unsightly, Aunt Natsuki denied the suspicion placed upon her. However, there was no longer any way around it. The girl stood up, brushed back her long hair, pointed at Aunt Natsuki, and said it one more time.
あなたが犯人です。
Hello, Erica.
後宮夏日さん。
Just one of those things you pick up. Hey, new OP! It's just one of those things you pick up through osmosis from being on the net for long enough in the right circles. Alright, time to get spoilered on more characters and events that are gonna happen. Time to get another copyright claim. Yes, yes, so many witches. Gotta love it. I was about to say, I wonder when we were gonna get the opening, because when I booted up the game today, because now we're in the answer arcs. I forget what like this disc game is technically called, but you know, it started playing, and I'm like, oh, this is new. Better skip that. I know she has a pirate hat, and that she's dumb, and that's really it. Slate flashbang. It's a little dark in here. I got the curtains drawn. Haha, yeah, big kanji that I can't read. Oh man, speaking of kanji, my university classes start tomorrow, including my Japanese 111, which is the first class, which I technically could probably skip over and go to the next class after that, considering I already know my hiragana and katakana and some loose grammar. And, you know, a couple phrases, but it's like, yeah, I could take the placement test and, like, you know, save 2 months, but strong foundation, you know, relearn everything, you know, fill in any gaps in my understanding that I might have. Natsuki yelled as she knocked loudly and repeatedly. Shortly after, man, look at me just skipping out on letters there. I was about to say softly after doesn't make any goddamn sense. Shortly after, there was a heavy clunking sound, and the sound of the door to Kinzo's study unlocking could be heard. As the door opened, a heavily sweet, venomous odor flowed out. Also, yeah, you in the character sheet now? No? Okay, that's fine. Natsuki was always ashamed of how she automatically grimaced at that, even though she thought it rude to the family head. Kraus was waiting for her inside the study. Natsuki flew into his arms.
落ち着きたまえ。今南條先生が見ている。
With an uncertain gait, Natsuki went towards the center of the study, supported by Kraus. There, a dignified bed fitting for the head of the Ushiromiya family could be seen, along with Nanjo, Genji, and Kumasawa. Also, you know, it rolled back the clock a little bit, considering all the people weren't dead. After sighing deeply, Nanjo left the side of the bed. On the bed, Kinzo could be seen lying down, sleeping. Or appeared to be sleeping. Yep.
大往生だ。金蔵さんも心残りはなかっただろう。
You and I both know that's a fucking lie. Sobbing, Natsuki put her head against the chest of the man who had fallen into a sleep from which he would never awaken. Yeah, you know, need to cut a dignified figure. Not whatever this is. No, it wasn't. My man's been on his deathbed for like fucking a couple years. Natsuki couldn't stop her tears over the death of Kinzo, whom she had loved like a second father. Kumasawa rubbed Natsuki's back, consoling her. Kraus slumped into his late father's favorite chair. By sitting there, he might have been immersing himself in the memories of his departed father. Or perhaps he thought that by sitting here, he might be able to understand just a bit of the madness of Kinzo's later years, which had eluded him to the end of his father's life. Nanjo turned his back and looked down over the outside world through a crack in the curtains. It was the same thing he'd often done when Kinzo sat in that chair contemplating a chess move.
同じ死ぬならせめて寝込んで1年後に死亡とかもう少ししかるべき準備の猶予期間を設けてから死んでほしかったのね。
それは逆だ。最後の瞬間までお元気だったことを喜ぶべきです。
建前上はそうなるんだね。
Hold on, does it say what time this is taking place? Yeah, you can see when I'm recording and whatnot. No. So, this is the before the conference, whatnot. You know, when they're playing their game where Kinzo's already dead. Nanjo understood that as well. This was the death of Ushirimiya Kinzo, a man who had risen like a comet and glittered like a supernova in a post-war world of business. His funeral would probably be of a fantastic scale, and it would also be the ceremony marking Krause's inheritance of the headship. He would have to arrange everything as the host of the event, carry out funeral diplomacy perfectly, and make it clear that the Ushirimiya family would still hold enormous influence in the political and financial spheres. As Nanjo watched Krause, he was vividly reminded of the time when Kinzo had been suddenly selected as the Ushirimiya family head, a time in which Kinzo had been lost and confused. Nanjo could remember that well, and for that reason, he was able to understand Krause's distress and sympathize with it. Natsuhi's sobs eventually subsided. Seeing this, and leaving Kumasawa to care for Natsuhi as a fellow woman, Genji returned to Krause. And he's like, there's too much estrogen in the air here, I need to step out for a second. And he lowered his head slightly, as though asking what should be done.
手続き等は私と源氏さんでやろう。クラウスさんはまずは親戚の方々に連絡した方がいいでしょうな。
Krause, with his hand still over his eyes, didn't respond. Perhaps even though he had known this day would come, Krause really couldn't hide his shock at how suddenly it had reached them.
私と南條先生にお任せを。旦那様はまずは奥様とご相談いただくのが良いかと思います。
Maybe she heard that, or maybe it was a coincidence. As though responding to Genji's words, Natsuhi came over. Her eyes were red from crying so much, but she apparently understood the heavy responsibility that had been imposed on the two of them even better than Krause did.
これからはあなたが栄光ある後宮家の当主です。お父様の後を立派に継いだことを内外に示しましょう。この夏日、あなたの妻として棺を並べる日まで
Don't talk about yourself in the first person, it's weird. I know it's a Japanese thing, like, you know, syntax. And not just like, yeah, it's a thing Japanese people do because the language is structured like that, but no, whatever. Moving on. Trying to encourage her husband, who was overcome with shock, Natsuhi lent him some reassuring words. When Krause finally lowered his hands that had been covering his face, he looked up at the ceiling with a blank expression and let out a deep, deep sigh.
どうかしっかりお父様の残したものを食い荒らそうと目論む輩が大勢いるのですよ。私たちはお父様の名誉と財産を守るために戦わなければなります。
Yep. Get the BB gun, gotta fucking shoot the circling vultures.
最初の仕事ですよ。
分かってる。分かっているとも。
I feel like his hairspray is different there. Like, his turned head, is that a new one? I like the color. I feel like he's had a sprite similar to that, but it didn't look exactly like that.
お父様の葬儀にふさわしいものとなるよう特に手配を頼みますよ。
かしこまりました。
それから南條先生、お父様は病院でお亡くなりになったわけではないので。
Yeah.
そう。
場合によっては解剖が入るかもしれませんな。
なんとかなりませんか。亡くなったとはいえ、お父様の大切なお体です。傷をつけるなど耐えられることではありません。
気持ちはわかる。だがそういうところをきっちりすることも大切だ。それにこう言ってはなんだが、難しい親族の方々が多いんじゃないかね。
There was no way to know what those inheritance vultures might try to find fault with. They might squawk that there was something suspicious about the cause of death, and used that as a point of contention to start some trouble. Right now, not only was it important to pay Kinzo's remains the respect they were due, but there was also a need to focus on solidifying the position of the new family head, Kraus.
わかりました。必要最小限にお願いします。間違ってもお父様の威厳が損なわれるようなお姿にしないように。
それは大丈夫だ。安心しなさい。とにかく金蔵さんのことはわしらに任せて、夏日さんはクラウスさんのそばにいてあげなさい。これからが大変なんだから。
わかっています。
That's putting it lightly.
あなたもどうかしっかり。
Kraus was still staring lazily at the ceiling with a befuddled expression on his face. Nazi understood the shock and heavy responsibility. She felt that she understood her husband's feelings as well as anyone possibly could.
親族への連絡は今だけは休まれてください。
Kraus didn't respond. Nazi thought that he was being a little bit weak, but that just made it all the more important for her to support him right now. Seeing her husband like this actually stirred Nazi up, and a resolute expression rose to her face.
これから忙しくなります。今できることを始めましょう。夫はきっとお父様と二人きりで話したいこともあると思います。私たちは一度ここを退出しましょう。
そうでございますね。その時間はきっと今しか取れないでしょうから。
Yeah, you're gonna have to go fucking put Kinzo in the icebox. Being in charge of a funeral is tiring work. There's no time to shed tears. If Kraus were to be given time to cry for his dead father, that time would have to be now. Everyone agreed with Kumasawa's words. Even then, Kraus continued to lazily gaze up at the ceiling and didn't respond in any way. Natsuhi urged the servants to go.
私はジェシカにも話してきます。今やあの子が次期当主です。それにふさわしい自覚を持つようによく言い聞かせなくては。
待て。
As they each started to make their way out of the study, Kraus finally spoke. They stopped walking.
はい。
待て。
はい。
Hadn't she already stopped walking, just like her husband had asked? But despite that, he had once again told her to wait. From those slightly weak words, Natsuki understood that he probably stopped her because he wanted her to be by his side.
お前たちは下へ。私は夫と言います。何かあったらここに電話するように。
かしこまりました。だから待てと言っている。
Yeah, not moving like this whole, stop everything. Kraus suddenly raised his voice. Everyone jumped and turned around. Unable to comprehend what she had done to spark her husband's wrath, Natsuki ran up to him.
どうしましたあなた。私は何か失礼なことを口にしてしまいましたか。だったらお許しを。
いや、違う。そうじゃない。そうじゃない。少し待て。時間をくれ。
ええ、分かっています。心を整理するためにも必要です。私たちはその時間をあなたにあげようと、ここから静かに出ていくだけですよ。
だからそれを待てというのだ。いいか、誰もその場から動くな。一歩たりともだ。疲れたなら椅子にでもソファーにでも好きに座ればいい。だから何も喋らずに静かに黙って何もせずにいろ。
Those unreasonable words felt like a glimpse of how Kinzo used to be. Natsuki couldn't hide a slight surprise at those words, which made it seem as though Kinzo had possessed her husband. Natsuki told the servants to wait for the time being. She ordered them to sit in the sofa a short distance off, approached her husband, and spoke to him in a small voice.
あなたがお命じになれば、夏日はいくらでも待ちます。とどまります。ですからどうか、お気を鎮められてください。
違う。そうではないのだ。そうではないのだ。
Was it really his father's blood, or was he actually being possessed? Kraus's disorderly style of speech oh man, what's wrong with me? Style of speech strongly resembled Kinzo's. As she watched this, Natsuki felt with even greater certainty that Kraus was indeed Kinzo's son, and that he was the true successor to the head more suitable than any other person.
夏こっち
Kraus stood up and headed towards the window, trying to lengthen the distance between himself and the servants waiting on the sofa by an even small amount. Natsuki realized that he must have something secret that he wanted to talk about.
はい、あなた、何事ですか？
親父に死なれてはまずいのだ。
Yeah.
しかし、もうお亡くなりになりました。そういうわけには参りません。
そうじゃない。今はまずいんだ。
どういうことですか？
親父の財産を担保にしている。相続問題になれば隠しを押せない。
はあ、担保ですか？いかほど？
A lot.
メロディーランドの時、近藤君を応援したことがあっただろう。
あの方とは縁を切れと申し上げたじゃありませんか。私には断ったと言ったはず。どうして？
男の義理というものがある。断れなかった。
Ah, my man just likes amusement parks. Kraus claimed to hold honor as a virtue. However, Natsuki knew that he most often used this as an excuse after he couldn't bring himself to pass up a deal.
お金に余裕があるならいざ知れず。この島のリゾート計画でかなりの借金をされたのではありませんでしたか？
Well...
ああ、したさ。方々で恩人に世話になったのだ。それらを返済するためにも座しているわけにはいかない。返済するためには金がいる。金を生むためには金がいる。金がなければ始まらない。
Oh, yeah.
この島の計画だって企画会社がおかしなことにならなければ順調だったのだ。都の役人とも連携は取れていた。東京都の新しい観光スポットになると知事の太鼓判ももらえていた。私の根回しは完璧だったのだ。たまたま巡り合わせとタイミングが悪かった。ちょっとした運のすれ違い、事故みたいなものだった。
あれは事故なんかではありません。詐欺です。あなたは騙されたのです。初めから彼らはこの島のリゾート計画など描けていなかったのです。
そんなことはないぞ。土方君のビジョンは先見性にあふれていた。世界と未来に目を向けた広大な視野は私が夢だと信じていたものなど猫の額ほどの広さしかないことを教えてくれた。夢が広がる。世界に未来に。
Oh man, sounds like they might have got you hook, line, and
夏
sinker.
日も一緒に聞いていただろう。
ええ、聞いていました。そしてお帰りになられた後に申し上げたはずです。あの方はうさんくさい。語るのは未来ばかりで地に足がついていない。これ以上お付き合いしてはならないと。
土方君は立派な好青年だ。彼の生き様からは学ぶことも多いぞ。彼は若いが尊
I
敬
didn't
で
know
き
you
る。
were so idealistic, Kraus.
彼のことを侮辱することは許さんぞ。
あなたは同じことを月旅行の時にもおっしゃいました。先見性がある、未来がある、夢があると連呼され、その挙句はいかがでしたか？荒唐無稽な話だったとあなた自らがお認めになったではありませんか。私はNASA の高官とか名乗るおかしな男が現れた頃からこれは絶対におかしいと確信しておりました。
俺は
Oh yeah, you know, the National Space Agency is, you know, in the tourism business now.
あの件については私も曽根崎氏も被害者だ。彼の先見性は今をもって間違っていない。将来必ず世界の大富豪が宇宙旅行をたしなむ時代が訪れる。
Yeah, you're probably not wrong.
そしてその最初の事業を民間一社によって独占される。
But, you'll be dead by then.
着眼点は間違っていない。それを利用して世界中の投資家を騙している国際的な詐欺集団がいて、
曽根崎という男もその一味だったと申し上げているのです。あなたはどこまでお人よしなのですか？どうしていつもうさんくさい話を疑いもせずに乗ってしまうのですか？
訂正しろ。
Well, you know, you get 10 bad ones, but, you know, as long as you get one good one, you make back all the lost money and you're good.
曽根崎氏は優秀な未来ある男だ。うさんくさくなどない。彼の語る夢は未来を先取りしているからこそ、それが見える者には妄想にしか見えんだけだ。女のお前には未来など見えん。
ええ、女の私には未来など見えません。でも現在なら見えます。
Yeah, she can see what's in front of her.
私の目の前で 狡猾な二枚舌の詐欺師たちに丸め込まれ騙されてなお妄信している哀れな夫の姿なら見ることができます。
黙る。お前には金持ち業も経済も何もわからん。夫の仕事に口を出すな。妻は家事だけをしてればいい。お前は黙っていろ。
Without another word, Natsuki fell silent, just as Kraus wanted. She was already far beyond anger and sadness, and the emotion that lay on the other side of those was an almost indifferent pity. Kraus had always been frightened of Kinzo since the days of his youth, and had become had come to subconsciously admire the way his father lived. Without realizing it, he had come to believe that he could only be recognized as a man in his own right if he surpassed his father. However, Kinzo had been a mad genius, the likes of which had never before been seen in the Ushiromiya family's long history. His talent was a gift from heaven, and definitely wasn't genetic, much less something that could be learned. Natsuki instructed the servants to not tell anyone about Kinzo's death, and dismissed everyone for the time being to give the two of them a chance to talk alone. Then she invited Kraus to her bedroom and made him tell her everything about their current financial situation. There were things that Natsuki hadn't been told about under the assumption that a woman had no business knowing. Natsuki had herself made a point of avoiding this area in the past, thinking that it wasn't a wife's place to intrude on such matters. I don't know, man. A lot of families I know, the wife's the one who holds the purse strings. However, this might have meant that she had been remiss in her duty as a wife to protect her family. The depths of this sin had been made quite clear to Natsuki. Kraus was probably tired of trying to defend himself. Perhaps because he had gotten a headache, he hid his face and sank into silence. Natsuki noticed that the water in the electric kettle was boiling and stood up to refill her cup with black tea. And when she touched the cup of black tea, she noticed for the first time. The sound of the cup and saucer clinking together told her that her fingers were shaking. Kraus had built up a large debt to obtain funds for his various projects, and to cover the losses when they had failed. Of course, he had put the mansion of property up as collateral. However, doing such a thing above board would have resulted in the mortgage being registered. Restricted? Registered? What did that say? In the mortgage being registered, okay. In other words, there would have been a record that Kraus had put Kinzo's wealth up as collateral to obtain a loan without anyone's permission. Kraus couldn't afford for Kinzo, Ava, and the others to learn of such a thing. Therefore, he had been putting those assets up as collateral using the worst possible method.
権利書と委任状を預けた。
Oh, you fucking moron.
それはどういう意味ですか？
What Kraus was saying probably meant that he had, in essence, signed away the rights to their assets. If those assets had been used as collateral for a loan, then Kraus would have had some options under the law. He would have had to deal with a bank, which would have absolutely no compassion, but they would have been able to work something out within the rules set by society. Yeah, you know, you have a lot of money on the line, the bank would be willing to, you know, play ball a bit and, like, kind of rework the terms of your loan. But, is this under the table thing? However, signing away the deed and the power of attorney was a whole different story. In short, even the mansion they were living at was at risk. If the person holding the deed were to decide to ignore his agreement with Kraus and sell the mansion to a third party right this moment, they would have no recourse whatsoever. Far from using their house as a collateral for a loan, this is basically the same as selling it to borrow money.
つまり後宮家の生殺与奪は金貸したちの手に委ねられていたわけですね。彼らがほんのわずかの気まぐれを起こして突然この家を売り払ったら
Out on the street.
私たちは今すぐにも荷物をまとめ出ていかなくてはならないということですね。
理屈上はそうだ。
No, you just gotta, move over the fucking Kuadorian.
だが
Unless you sold that
取
too.
引の相手はいずれも社会的信用のある人物ばかりだ。
Let's look at the deed and see what the property lines are for the Ushiromiya Mansion. Is there just like a weird extension? Like, oh man, for some reason the property also includes this mile-long strip of land that goes out into another big plot of land out in the woods. How strange. It's probably nothing.
サラ金じゃないぞ。経済人同士の信用取引だ。
Do normally reputable people do under the table loans with your house?
私も相手を信用している。相手だって私に金を貸すことで私が大きな事業を成功させ、投資した額が大きくなって帰ってくることを信用している。委任状を預けたのは私の誠意と事業の絶対の成功を疑わないからだ。
Like Kraus, are you actually fucking stupid?
ここで
Like,
渋ったのだ。
unironically, are you just dumb?
自分の事業に自分で自信が持てないことになる
Did
だ。
your dad hit you in the head too much as a kid? If your ventures had been successful, we wouldn't be in debt now, would we? Natsuki only barely stopped herself from saying it.
お父様は亡くなりました。するとどうなりますか。あなたの借金が白日の元となり、他の兄弟たちに咎められることになるわけですか。
それだけでは済まない。多分刑事訴訟にも及ぶだろう。
Yeah, I'm pretty sure this shit's legal?
刑事訴訟どうしてですか。
君は知らない方がいい。とにかく
Oh yeah, the reputable
絶
people
対に
you
このことを
fucking get
誰にも
loans
知ら
from,
れてはならんのだ。
if it comes to light, oh yeah, no, we're going to court. It's like, you're saying one thing, but now you're also saying this other thing. Kraus looked at the floor shamefully, shaking his head over and over. If it would come to criminal charges, then he must have broken some laws. He had probably been so intent on raising a large sum of money that he hadn't paid any heed to appearances. Kraus had seriously believed that his many projects would definitely succeed and return huge profits. So he had figured that even if he broke a few laws, he'd be able to pay everything back before too long and pretend the whole thing had never happened. This might have lessened his resistance towards breaking a couple laws. And now, Kinzo's death, the worst possible thing, had occurred, and soon he wouldn't be able to keep it all hidden.
私たちはどうなるのですか。
心配することはない。君は信じてくれんな。景気は今確実に上向いているんだ。私が都心で投資した不動産価値はみるみる上昇している。今それらを統合して巨大ビジネスタワーを建設する計画が進んでいる。
My man invested in the Millennium Tower?
これは私のこれまでの投資の中で最も確実で最も大きな成功をしているものだ。ただそれは身をつけるのにまだ時間をかける。絶対に確実だが今すぐというわけではないのだ。
Also, you only got a couple years before the bubble pops, my guy.
その事業の成功は借金を返済するに足りるものですか。
もちろんだと思う。これまでの借金を全て帳消しにできる。だから信じてくれ。もう少しだけ時間が欲しいんだ。
しかしお父様はもうお亡くなりになってしまいました。もうその時間はないのですよ。
Yeah.
分かっている。分かっているとも。
What is that? Someone using like a fucking belt sander outside? Alright, it's not really picking up on the mic, at least it looks like. You might be able to hear it when I'm talking, but oh yeah, I can see it. I can see it bumping up on the waveform. So I guess one of my neighbors across the street is doing some, I don't know, fucking deck work? Are they like sanding their deck in their backyard? Whatever. You're just gonna have to deal with that. That's great. Gotta love it. Normally wouldn't be that bad, but once again, recording in a sunroom, which is all windows, which means they all fucking vibrate and shake with any noise going on outside.
だからどこかから金を調達して今すぐに借金を返さなくてはならない。とにかく 金が必要なんだ。金が大量に今すぐ。うわーうわ
You
ー
good, my guy? Kraus roared and clutched his head, writhing about as if in pain. As Natsuki watched, several conflicting emotions swirled about in her chest. She felt pity for her husband, but at the same time, she felt he was a fool. And she also felt a mixture of anger and regret towards her own irresponsibility in letting her husband run wild for so long. It had been clear to him well before today that they were in a very critical situation. And yet he had irresponsibly waited for this moment to come, and was now writhing about. Her husband was so foolish and pitiful. It was easy to feel frustrated with him. However, she was his wife. For a wife to ridicule her husband as a fool would run in conflict with her responsibilities. If he was a fool, then she would have to support him to compensate. However, she didn't have a clue what she was meant to do about this. If there was a massive amount of money like that within easy reach, there was no way that Kraus wouldn't have already laid his hands on it. It would also be easy to tell him that to be a man and give up on everything. But that would also run in conflict with her responsibilities. She was Ushirimiya Natsuhi, the woman who had become Kraus's wife and had sworn to support him, the new head of the Ushirimiya family, for as long as she lived. She had to somehow help her husband in his effort to raise money. She understood it logically, but she couldn't suppress the indescribable feeling of dejection that seemed to rise up from the dark depths of her heart.
そうだ。親父の隠し黄金。10トンの黄金なら200億の価値がある。あれさえあれば。そうそう。あれさえ見つかれば万事は解決する。夏日、あれだ。魔女の碑文だ。あれを解こう。一緒に解こう。黄金さえ見つかれば万事解決なんだ。
Oh, yep.
そうさ。この島のどこかに隠されてるはずなんだ。
I mean, from the sounds of it, you're not wrong.
あれさえあれば。あれさえあれば。
一体あなたやめてください。
Kraus, acting as excited as if he had thought up a perfect, brilliant plan, grasped Natsuhi's upper arm tightly. Natsuhi couldn't help but be dumbfounded. It wasn't just because she heard something as fake-sounding as the hidden gold brought up. Kraus usually disparaged the story of the hidden gold, saying that it didn't exist and that it was all a fiction his father created to borrow a lot of money. Natsuhi was doubly taken aback because of this.
そうだ。ジェシカにも協力してもらおう。
She's a smart girl.
子供の感性でなら解けることもあるかもしれない。今は一家の一大事なんだ。みんなで協力し合わなくてはならない。そうだ。あんなの親父が作った気まぐれな
how hard could it
謎
be?
々なんだ。解けるはずさ。解けないはずがないんだ。それしかないんだ。ああ、夏日。本当によかった。まだ手は残っていたんだよ。こんなに身近に。
You're losing it, bud.
この島に黄金はある。それさえあれば万事解決なんだ。夏日、ジェシカを呼ぶんだ。今すぐここに。家族の危機は家族で乗り越えよう。さあ
Yeah,
早く。
and tell her to bring a fucking notebook and some colored pencils.
黄金はこの島にある。すぐ身近にあるんだ。
Natsuhi knocked Kraus aside, unable to withstand the pain in her arm. He was twisting in his excitement. Kraus tripped over the edge of the bed and flopped pathetically onto the floor.
いい加減にしてください。そしてどうか冷静になられてください。後宮家の一大事にそんな夢みたいなことを言い出してどうするとい
I
う
mean,
の
it
で
would
す
be
か。
nice.
夏日。
あなたもよく頭を冷やされて現実的な金策をお考えになってください。
Yeah, go fucking work on a tuna boat or
私
something.
も頭を冷やしてきます。
待ってくれ。
Either that or, like, you know, take another loan and buy a fleet of tuna boats. It's an investment. Maybe falling over had knocked sense back into him. Crush tried to tell Natsuki to stop, but she just kept walking. Closing the door forcefully, Natsuhi dashed away. Natsuhi ran through the corridor. She didn't want anyone to see her like this, but she ran headlong into Genji.
大変失礼いたしました。奥様、お怪我はございませんか？
Oh, just her pride.
私は大丈夫です。放っておきなさい。
かしこまりました。
源氏、お父様の書斎はどうなっていますか？
そのままにしております。南條先生は客間におられますが。
そうですか。書斎の鍵は持っていますか？
はい。
What, you gonna turn that into your own little personal
ござい
hideaway?
ます。
お貸しなさい。しばらく私とお父様の二人きりにするように。もし主人に私のことを聞かれても知らないというのですよ。
かしこまりました。
After grabbing the key to the study that Genji was holding out to her, Natsuhi rushed up the stairs. She then flew into the study, and finally, she cried out loud.
お父様、愚かな私たちをどうかお許しください。私と主人はお父様の築き上げてきたものを
No.
受け継ぐことができません。
That's been made very
罪
apparent.
深く愚かな私たちをどうかお許しください。そしてもしお許しいただけるならば
Maybe help us out?
愚かな私たちをお導きください。
Clinging to Kinzo as he slept in the bed, Natsuhi cried even harder. She kept imagining Kinzo sitting up suddenly and patting her head. No, father isn't the type of person to pamper. More likely, he'd yell at me to stop being so noisy. However, neither of these imaginations would come true, because it was an undeniable fact that Kinzo had entered an eternal sleep. But even so, Natsuhi begged the sleeping Kinzo to forgive and help them. It had only been a few hours since his passing. Perhaps his soul was still here, listening to her. Believing this, Natsuhi begged for Kinzo's forgiveness and help even more earnestly.
やかましいぞ。私は沈黙を尊ぶといつも言っている。
That voice made Natsuhi jump up in surprise. When she faced in the direction that the voice had come from, she saw Kinzo sitting at the study desk, folding up his reading glasses.
またクラウスと喧嘩をしたのか。嫁をいたわらぬとはクラウスに私の悪いところばかりを受け継ぎよる。
That's he. I think you're hallucinating.
お父様。
You're being hysterical.
なんというみそぼらしい顔か。顔を洗え。仮にも後ろ宮家次期当主の妻ではないか。そんな情けない面を使用人に見せてはならぬぞ。
The Kinzo in your heart Nazi here is, it's like a funhouse warped mirror version of him, except, instead of, usually you use that expression to like, oh, it's warped and evil and bad now, but like, nah, he was already fucked up, so now all the warping has kind of made him okay.
失礼しました。
Nazi understood. This was just an illusion, one that Nazi had created from her desire to speak with Kinzo and her memories of the man as he once was. Nah, I don't think he was ever like this. No, that's not it. She believed that just for now, Kinzo's soul had shown itself to her. She was sure that doubting this would cause it to vanish in an instant.
当主の座が継承されたと同時に早速厄介事が起きたようだな。
はい、お父様。夫を支えることができませんでした。本当に申し訳ありません。
Nah, that's all on him.
つくづく後ろ宮家は呪われている。私が当主を継承した時もそれはひどいものだった。 お前たちの苦難などまだまだ可愛いものだ。
Yeah, but, you know, you were able to collaborate with occupational forces in order to get some real good deals. They're not in such a lucrative market at the moment. Well, you know, besides the economic bubble, but, you know, let's ignore that. Kinzo's succession to the family headship came suddenly. At the time, he was nothing more than a young man from one of the branch families, far separated from the Ushirmiya main family. The main family might have had honor and tradition, but that was of no relevance at all to Kinzo, and he couldn't have cared less. Then, the principal members of the main family were wiped out in the Great Kanto earthquake, along with their businesses. On top of that, there was a complicated antagonism between the members of the family at the time, and the elders were all trying to impose their will on others in that sinking ship. Because of this, they weren't even able to elect a leader to rebuild the Ushirmiya family. They found common ground by selecting Kinzo, a youth with absolutely no ties to any of the opposing elders, to be the head. So the elders hadn't really entrusted Kinzo with the rebuilding of the Ushirmiya family. Kinzo had been nothing more than their puppet, with his arms and legs being pulled in opposite directions.
はい、お父様の苦難の日々はよく存じております。
そして戦争が始まった。当時の私はもう生きていくことに疲れ果てていた。戦場で死ねればと願ったが、前線には送られなかった。
If you're the head of a, you know, a real big important family with business ties, whatnot, no, you get a draft exemption. It's important for you to stay back and, you know, facilitate the war economy.
しかし、日に日に戦況が悪化し、本土決戦の時が近づいてきていた。私は不謹慎にもその日が早くやってくることを願っていた。
It was said that as Kinzo listened to death's approaching footsteps day in and day out, he started cutting his ties with the world one by one. And then, on the day when he had freed himself from all his attachments to life and reached a state of enlightenment, he had a mystical experience. And he met her, the Golden Witch Beatrice.
私は魔女と契約を交わし、黄金と狂気の力を与えられた。その日を境に、古き私は死に、狂気の魔力を得た新しき私が誕生したのだ。
存じております。そして戦後、お父様は天才的辣腕にて後宮家を復興させるのです。
The now deceased elders who knew Kinzo at the time had whispered to each other that Kinzo must have taken a knock to the head on the battlefield and returned with a different personality. That was how much Kinzo stood out after the war. Whether the story about Kinzo meeting a witch was true or not, there could be no doubt that the extraordinary experience of war had prepared him for death and led him reach a state of enlightenment. Wait, I thought you said he didn't even go to the front line. Yeah, he might have been deployed on, like, some island that got hopped over. Hope to die on the battlefield. Yeah, was not sent to the front lines. Or maybe they just didn't know that. Natsuki must surely have felt that if Kinzo had decided to describe that resulting mystical experience as meeting with a witch, that wasn't something she could flatly dispute.
そうですね。お父様は戦争からお帰りになり、魔女ベアトリーチェを従え、真の意味での後宮家当主となられたのです。
そうだ。ベアトリーチェに出会う以前の私は、当主と呼ばれるだけの人形に過ぎ、私は黄金の魔女を従えて初めて当主たり得たのだ。
お父様、その黄金の魔女は新しき当主である夫クライスには力を貸してくださらないのでしょうか。
貸すであろうな。真に当主を継承したのだ。
真に継承するとはどういう意味ですか。
真の意味で後宮家の当主としての責任と誇りを持てるかどうかということだ。夏日 お前ならば分かっているはず。当主とは血で継承されるものではない。魂と信念によって継承されるのだ。クラウスが我が長男であっても、それがなくては真の当主とは呼べない。そしてそれが心に宿されていたなら、その人間はたとえクラウスでなくとも立派な新しき当主である。黄金の魔女ベアトリーチェは、その真の当主に力を貸すである。
Entire family's a bit of a lame horse.
そうであるな、ベアトリーチェ。
When Kinzo called the witch's name, gold butterflies seethed? You mean like seep? I mean, I guess you could use seethe like that. Seethed out of every corner of the room. This fantastical scene had an otherworldly beauty to it. It was like standing in the midst of a blizzard of golden flower petals being blown about a rose garden of gold. A lot of mentions of gold in that sentence. As Natsuhi stared at the scene in shock, the gold butterflies gathered and formed a human shape. Then, the witch of the portrait appeared.
いかにも、わらわこそが後宮家顧問錬金術師黄金の魔女ベアトリーチェである。わらわは奔放にして自由、誰の命令も聞かぬ。
それを世界でたった一人、私だけが支配した。だからこそ後宮家の当主たり得るのだ。
Sure.
その傲慢さこそが後宮家当主の資格だというか。
傲慢とはすなわち自信であり勇気である。そしてそれに見合う力を得ようとする悪なき向上心の表れである。だからこそ私はお前を支配した。
Whatever you gotta tell yourself, bud.
傲慢を語る男はそれを実現していく様を見るのは心地よいものだ。不言実行は強運なる者の言い訳に過ぎぬ。真の王者は持たぬ者さえも語る。
No, it's good to have a little bit of greed.
そしてその傲慢を確かに実現してみせるのだ。わらわを支配できる者にはその王者の傲慢が必要だ。
わかるか、夏日よ。真の王者はあらゆる苦難を恐れぬ。必ず乗り越えられると公言する。
I mean, yeah,
その算段
Kraus
が
does
なく
that,
とも
but not in the right way. He's just blind to, you know, what's really going on. It's like, nah, you just gotta believe, man. This time it's gonna turn out great, you know. He doesn't see it for what he is. I mean, for what it really is.
集い、あがめ、協力を
If
誓
you
う。
do, and then you're like, nah, I got this. Like, let's fucking go.
そこに
You
力
know,
が生ま
that's a
れ、
different story.
有言は実行されるのだ。それを心に刻め。
はい、お父様。
Natsuki understood. Through this mystical experience, Kinzo was teaching her the attitude required to overcome hardship, even after his own death. Feeling a warm sensation rise up in her chest, she let the valuable words Kinzo had given her echo throughout her mind over and over. A true monarch, in other words, the true head of the Ushirimiya family, was not to fear hardship. They had to believe that they could overcome any hardship. If they couldn't believe themselves capable, then there was no reason why they would be. Natsuki suddenly felt very ashamed of the way she had come into this room, sobbing and asking Kinzo what to do.
私は愚かでした。
うん、
後宮家の一大事に泣き言を言う暇などあるわけもありません。そしてお父様から後宮家を引き継いだ以上、私たちは何があってもその名誉を守り抜きます。ほう、どうやってクラウスの借金を返済するか、
No.
その青写真も描けぬのに。
You know, one step at a time. As Beatrice laughed unpleasantly, no, that wasn't it. She was testing Natsuhi to see whether she possessed the mental readiness to be a true monarch. Natsuhi didn't hesitate anymore. She answered clearly, gazing into Beatrice's eyes.
はい、今はどうすればいいのか、その方法をまだ見つけることはできません。しかし、私の夫は新しき後ろ宮家の当主であり、私はそれを支える妻です。ですから、夫に代わり、私が宣言します。聞こう。後ろ宮クラウスと夏日は、必ずやこの苦難を乗り越え、後ろ宮家の名誉を守ってみせます。
Alright, die's been
お父
cast.
様にご心配をおかけすることはありません。
クラウスの借金の規模と惨憺たる状況については知っておるな。
Vaguely, but you know, first step, getting all the pieces in order, so that way you can get a full scope of what the damage is.
はい、この屋敷さえも明日には立ち退けと命じられても拒めぬという最悪の状況です。遺産分配となれば親族たちに刑事告発さえされるかもしれません。しかし心配には及びません。そうなる前に借金をすべて返済し、名誉を取り戻し
My
ま
phone
す。
vibrating on me. Or is it just fucking Facebook? Yeah, just Facebook. I don't care that my sister posted new photos. As she stood at attention with a resolute attitude, Natsuhi proclaimed this clearly with Ushimiya Kinzo and Beatrice as witnesses. For a while, they remained silent as though weighing Natsuhi's resolve. Then Kinzo chuckled and turned away.
よし、なぜにこやつが我が息子ではなかったのか。
その資質を持つ女を息子がめとったことさえ、これもまたそなたの強運。
ベアトリーチ、私の最後の命令だ。
当主でないそなたの命令をもはや聞く義理は
Then
な
call
い
it
ぞ。
a favor.
ほう、ならば新しき後ろ宮家当主の命令に従え。
そなたはすでに当主でなく、クラウスは未だ当主ではない。
Crown's up for
わ
grabs.
らわは誰に仕えよというのか。
お前にそれを委ねる。後ろ宮家の当主を受け継ぐ資格があるかどうか、そして片翼のわしの紋章を背負うにふさわしいかどうか。
Yep, go fucking put on your wizard hat and play
お
Merlin.
前が確かめる
Go
の
be your little kingmaker.
断るぞ。当主でなき男の命令など聞けぬわ。
いや違うぞ。これは遺言である。当主が残したお前への最後の命令である。
ならば従わぬわけにはいかぬか。わらわもつくづく
Oh,
付き合
only
い
the best.
違うな。
ほう、
興味を持ったからであろう。
つくづくそなたには隠し事ができんな。
夏
Yeah, quit flirting.
はい、お父様。
乗り越えてみるこの苦難を。
はい。
Natsuhi, who might have been nothing more than that might have been nothing more than a simple response. But to Kinzo and Beatrice, it seemed to carry much greater significance. Beatrice nodded deeply, and with a motion as elegant as her dress, she bowed deeply before Natsuhi.
後ろ宮家顧問錬金術師、黄金の魔女ベアトリーチェ。
You most certainly are.
後ろ宮家の苦難を再び乗り越えるため、そなたの力となろうぞ。
ありがとう。
Yeah, well, what's
あなたの力が必要です。
the interest on this one gonna be?
私たちは必ずこの苦難を乗り越えます。
Because the last time it was pretty steep.
そのために助力は惜しまぬが、先に断らねばならぬ。かつて金蔵の窮地を救ったように、そなたに再び莫大な黄金を与えれば、この度の苦難は解決することは分かっている。しかしそれはできぬのだ。
そうですか。
すまんな、夏。ベアトリーチェの黄金は私一代限りという契約なのだ。そしてそれを受け継ぐためには 魔女の碑文を解かねばならぬのが取り決め。
黄金は碑文にて封じられている。だからそれを解けぬ限り、そなたに黄金の魔法は与えられぬ。
Better start giving a little crack at it.
わかりました。ならば他の方法でこの窮地を脱する方法を模索しましょう。主人は時間をかけるとは言っていますが、必ず借金は返済できると言っています。そのための時間を得ることができれば、この苦難は乗り越えられます。
よいぞ夏日、続け。
しかし金蔵はもう死んでいるぞ。医者と使用人は葬儀の準備。そなたは親族たちにその連絡だ。そなたは自らその金策の猶予時間を終わらせる宣言をすることになる。自ら刃を下ろす断頭台も愉快なものよ。
Nazi gasped and looked up at the ceiling. There wasn't actually anything there. But even so, Nazi had found something.
降りたか、魔力が。
夏日、決まったか。わらわに望む奇跡の魔法が。
A body bag and a big fucking chest freezer. All of those who had witnessed Kinzo's corpse were once again gathered in the study. Kraus was still very unsettled and clutching at his head. Genji was as expressionless as ever. Najo and Kumasawa wore bewildered expressions on their faces. But in stark contrast to all of them, Natsu's expression was resolute.
あなたにもう一度お尋ねします。金策は間違いないのですね。
1年。いや、せめて半年あれば必ず見れる計画なんだ。
Probably also said that about all the other ones that fucking got you in the hole
しかし、
to begin with.
今すぐにはどうしても無理なんだ。
ならば、それを待ちましょう。
しかし、お前も言ったぞ。
Just gotta wait and hope.
親父はもう死んでしまった。
お父様はお亡くなりになどなっていませんよ。
Wink, wink, nudge,
まだ
nudge.
こうしてご健在であられます。
When Natsuhi said this, everyone looked up instantly, startled, because they immediately understood what those words meant. However, Cross alone didn't get it right away and had to ask. He is just stupid. That's really all it is. He's just has below average intelligence.
親父はもう現にそこに。
繰り返します。お父様は未だにご健在であられます。ご自身の研究がお忙しいので、これまで以上に書斎を出ることはできません。ですから私たちはお父様が研究に専念できるように外務をすべて執り行い、お父様に不要なお仕事が及ばないようにしなくてはなりません。つまりそれはこれまでと何ら変わらないということ、理解できていますね。
Man, I can't wait till I'm fucking old and retired and can just like live off my retirement money and pension and just like sit around in an apartment when I'm like 70 and just play World of Warcraft or whatever all day. Not World of Warcraft particularly, because I'll be honest, I don't really like WoW. But, you know, something to that extent. Just like full-on fucking neat mode. Let's go.
はい。片翼のわしの家具はこれからも親方様にお仕えいたします。
熊沢、そして南條先生、私の話は理解できましたね。
それでいいのかね、夏日さん。
お父様は確かに今日お亡くなりになったかもしれません。
But he lives on in our hearts.
しかし、
So it's like
今
he's
この場
not
にいる
gone at
私
all.
たち全員が信じることで、お父様を蘇らせる魔法を使うことができま
The
す。
real treasure of the Ushiromiya family was the friends we made along the
無
way.
理ですよ、奥様。そんな、いくらなんでも。
解剖すれば死亡時期を特定される。不審がられることは避けられん。
お父様はお亡くなりにならないのですから、解剖などされる言われはありません。
Yeah, he'll just go off fishing one day and never come back. Of course, she wasn't planning to make Kinzo live forever. The fake life given to Kinzo would only last until Kraus could repay his debts. After that, Kinzo's soul would finally be able to sleep in peace. Nanjo repeated to himself that the time of death would be discovered during the autopsy, but Natsuki said again that this wouldn't be a problem.
お父様は死亡届によってお亡くなりになるのではありません。
そうか。失踪届か。
After clapping his hands together, Kraus stood up, shaking his fist.
そうです。借金が無事に返済でき、お父様にお休みいただける準備が整ったなら、その時に
He
お父
went
様
on
の
a
失踪を宣言
quest
し
of
ます。
magic fulfillment or whatever. Rokenjima's vast, uncultivated forest was the perfect place to stage a disappearance. One day, Kinzo would go out into the forest for a walk and never return. They would search for him without success and be forced to report his disappearance.
失踪なら死体がなくても死亡届を出せる。つまり死亡時期を隠せるということだ。どうだ南條先生、これなら何の問題もない。
確かにそういうことにはなり
Yes,
ま
but
す
this
が
is highly illegal.
それで良いのですか、奥様。確かに私たちが黙っていれば、親方様がお亡くなりになられたのは秘密にできるかもしれません。ですが、どこでどう間違って誰かに知られないとも。
熊沢、声が大きいです。お父様はあちらでお休み中なのですよ。
Yeah, she's resting.
起こしてしまわれるつもりですか？
Keep up the kayfabe, Kumasawa. It isn't a corpse. Kinzo is sleeping. As Natsuki said that, Kinzo lay quietly on the bed, as though there was nothing at all odd about her words. Thank you for searing my eyes. Love it.
さあさあ思い出してごらんなさい。そなたがどんな姿をしていたのか、そなたがどんな日々を謳歌していたのか。
Once again, a storm of gold butterflies started to swirl, covering Kinzo's cold body. Then, after the butterflies exploded into fine gold powder and disappeared, just like those fairy tales that had been told over and over since long ago, Kinzo slowly opened his eyes and sat up.
お父様。
夏日、先に我が名誉のために断っておくぞ。私は生への執着からそなたにこれをそそのかしたのではない。
I mean, yeah.
嘘つきめ。多少は予見していたであろうが。どうだ金蔵。
What, to be a zombie?
体の方は。
悪くはないが、どこか夢の中のような感じだ。重みがないな。
この世にとどまることを許されぬ存在が未だとどまっているのだ。多少の不自由は諦めよ。
お体は本当に大丈夫なのですか？
Well, he didn't say it was like a bad
本
thing.
当に大丈夫なのですか？
むしろ心地よいくらいだ。これが死後の世界の感覚ならば、幽霊気取りも捨てたものではないぞ。
これにてどうか。夏金蔵はよみがえった。
Sure
故に
has.
葬儀は不要。
Yep.
そなたの苦難はこれにて解決だ。
ベアトリーチェ。
Just playing pretend all together in this room with the dead body. As Natsuki tried to find words of gratitude, Beatrice waggled her index finger and spoke.
感謝の言葉はいらぬぞ。
I wanted to say wagged, but there was an L in there, and that threw me for a loop.
支配者は傲慢であればよい。わらわは頼みは聞かぬが、命令には従うのでな。
それでも言います。ありがとう。これで主人のために時間が稼げます。あとは私たちの仕事です。
You say
しかし
you'll
な、
try to handle it.
ここ確かに金蔵はよみがえったが、それは永遠ではない。我が魔力が続く限りである。半魔法の毒素により、魔法は破られてしまうかもしれぬことを心せよ。魔法の断りを正しく理解し、その維持に努めよ。
let's not turn Natsuhi
わ
into
ら
a
わは
witch,
そなたに
please.
奇跡を見せるが、それをつかみとどめるのは
無論です。あなたにもらったこの奇跡を私たちは決しておろそかにしません。
それでよい。なるほどな。主と畳は新しい方がいいというのは本当らしい。
Well, like tatami?
気に入った。わらわはそなたに使えようぞ。後ろ宮夏日。我こそは後ろ宮家顧問錬金術師。いつでも我が名を呼ぶがいい。さすれば現れ、わらわはそなたに
Yeah, just,
奇
you
跡
know,
を
in
授ける
private
であ
where
る。
no one else is, so that way no one can see her.
ありがとう。私は後宮夏日。あなたを刺激し、後宮家の名誉を守ります。
And oh, the previous conference. Thank you for white flashing me and blinding me once again. But with that, a little shorter one today. I know, don't cry. That is where we're going to end it here for today. Once again, thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, ring the notification bell. See you all guys next time for the next episode of Umineko, where it'll probably be a little bit of a longer one. I'm just hungry. I'm just really fucking hungry today, and it's distracting me. I just want to eat, man. I just want to get some lunch. So yeah, bye. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.